Not everything that ends is truly over. Sometimes what appears to be gone is only hidden, waiting for the right moment to return. There are encounters that don't feel like beginnings, but recognitions, as if something ancient stirs beneath the surface. You meet a person, and deep inside your soul whispers, "I remember you." It's not logic that speaks. It's a silent knowing, the kind that echoes from places beyond time. Carl Jung once said that certain connections don't start in this life, they're remembered through it. These are the stories written before we ever arrived. When two souls are truly destined, their bond is not dictated by circumstance, chance, or even choice. It exists outside of time, like a thread woven into the very fabric of the universe. That's why, no matter the distance, the silence, or the chaos, these souls tend to find each other again. But why? What power is at play behind this reunion? Jung's analytical psychology gives us a map. He saw these encounters not as mere coincidences, but as symbolic moments orchestrated by the self, the deepest core of who we are. When we meet someone who seems to shake our foundations, it's not just emotional, it's spiritual. The connection acts as a mirror, reflecting something buried, something vital. And that's what we'll explore together in this video. How Jung's ideas of the anima and animus, projections and the journey of individuation reveal the truth behind these unforgettable bonds. This isn't a tale about romance, it's a story about becoming whole. Because the one who returns isn't just another person. They often return to show you who you really are. So if you've ever felt that someone was meant for you and that no matter the silence or time apart, something greater was always pulling you back together, stay with me. What you're feeling may not be fantasy. It might be a memory of something sacred calling you home. Carl Jung taught that when two souls recognize each other, something far deeper than attraction takes place. Beneath the surface, ancient forces begin to move. Archetypes that live within the collective unconscious. The anima and the animus, symbols of the inner feminine and masculine, awaken. And when they do, we don't just meet someone. We meet a reflection of what we've been missing within ourselves. These archetypes aren't bound by gender or culture. They are universal energies, shaping how we love, relate, and grow. When someone ignites these dormant symbols, it creates a magnetic pull, not of the body but of the soul. It feels inexplicable, yet undeniable. It's not love at first sight, it's remembrance at first encounter. As if something ancient within whispers, "This is part of you." But this recognition is rarely pure. It often comes wrapped in projection. We don't see the other as they are. We see them as we need them to be. We place on them our hopes, our pain, our longings. Not out of deception, but because their presence mirrors back what lies buried in our psyche. Jung believed this is not a mistake. It is the first sacred step toward individuation, the path of becoming whole. So if you've ever felt an immediate deep bond with someone, know this. It's not just emotion. It might be your unconscious revealing itself through another person. Nothing that deeply affects you comes without meaning. The soul doesn't seek pleasure, it seeks evolution. And through the other, it remembers what it came here to reclaim. Type in the comments, "I recognize when the soul speaks louder than the mind." Writing is the first manifestation of desire. When you write it, you affirm it, not just to yourself but to the universe. Recognition is the first step, and reunion begins when you no longer resist what already lives inside you. Some soul connections don't come to complete us, they come to confront us. The deeper the bond, the more intense the reflection. What we see in the other is often what we've hidden from ourselves. Love, in this form, is not comfort. It's a mirror, a sacred one. And in that mirror, we don't just see beauty, we see our shadow. In Jungian psychology, the shadow holds everything we've repressed or denied: fears, anger, jealousy, neediness. And when a destined soul appears, they don't just awaken love, they awaken the unconscious. Suddenly, old wounds resurface, emotions intensify, and we blame the other, not realizing they are simply revealing what was already within us, waiting to be healed. It's easy to believe love should be peaceful, smooth, free of conflict, but soul-level love shatters that illusion. It strips away our masks, not to hurt us, but to liberate us. The other becomes a trigger, not because they are wrong, but because they are close. So close they touch the wounds we've guarded our whole lives. And this is where transformation begins, not when we avoid the tension, but when we face it. Not when we demand perfection from the other, but when we ask, what is this reaction trying to teach me? True love doesn't avoid discomfort. It walks through it, because behind every shadow is a light waiting to be reclaimed. The one who sees you in both your brilliance and your brokenness, that's the soul mirror. And if you dare to look into it without running, you'll realize this love was never about staying the same. It was always about becoming more than you thought you could be. When two souls are truly connected, their meeting often triggers not just joy, but crisis. It's a paradox most don't expect. You imagine union will bring peace, but what arrives first is disruption. That's because the soul doesn't come to comfort the ego. It comes to awaken the self. And awakening rarely feels gentle. The deeper the connection, the more layers it pierces. The masks we've worn begin to crack. Old patterns collapse. Suddenly, the person we thought would save us is holding up a mirror we can't avoid. And sometimes that reflection is too much to bear. That's when distance arises, sometimes by choice, sometimes by force, but always with purpose. Jung believed that separation is not always the end. It can be a sacred pause, a space the self creates to allow inner work to unfold. The time apart is not a punishment, it's a preparation. A symbolic descent into the underworld of the psyche, where old wounds are exposed and illusions die. It hurts, deeply, but it's the kind of pain that reshapes us. In this silence, we are forced to face ourselves without distraction. We begin to ask, why did I need the other to feel whole? What part of me did they reflect that I wasn't ready to embrace? These questions don't bring immediate answers, but they begin the process of individuation, of becoming who we truly are beyond projection and fantasy. What returns after this type of separation is never the same love that once left. It is quieter, truer, less about desire, more about presence. Because when souls reconnect not out of need but out of wholeness, that's when real union begins. There comes a moment when love shifts. It stops being a craving to be filled and becomes a conscious choice. The illusions have crumbled. The projections have burned away. What remains is not fantasy but presence, a recognition that the other is not your savior. They are your mirror, your teacher, your sacred challenge. At this stage, love no longer feeds the ego, it feeds the soul. It asks for patience instead of urgency, depth instead of drama. It's quieter but more powerful, because now you're no longer seeking completion. You're offering yourself from a place of inner fullness. And in that space, love becomes spiritual, not as an idea but as a lived experience. This kind of love doesn't avoid shadow, it holds it. It doesn't demand perfection, it welcomes humanity. And above all, it surrenders control. Jung taught that when we stop clinging to the other as a solution, we begin to encounter the self. And from that place, love is no longer reactive. It is sacred. It is energy that flows, not binds. To choose someone after you've seen their shadow and after they've seen yours is a divine act. It's not easy, but it's real. And it marks the rebirth of the connection on a higher frequency, one anchored not in fantasy, but in truth. The soul doesn't seek safety, it seeks awakening. And love is its sharpest tool. Across every culture and age, stories of love that defy time and death continue to echo. Jung believed this wasn't coincidence, it was archetype. Co-eternal love is not just a romantic idea, it is a primordial symbol buried deep in the collective unconscious. From Psyche and Eros to Romeo and Juliet, the myth repeats itself. Two souls separated by fate, reunited by destiny. This archetype lives in us. It stirs when we meet someone who feels familiar in a way we can't explain. It's not memory but resonance, not logic but myth. Jung taught that we live myths without knowing it, that we walk through life enacting symbolic roles shaped by forces beyond our awareness. And when we fall into deep, inexplicable love, that myth awakens. That's why some bonds feel timeless, why you dream of someone before meeting them, why strange synchronicities pull your lives together. It's the archetype speaking. And if you listen closely, you'll feel it, that quiet certainty that this person is not just a chapter in your life, but a doorway to something sacred within. But Jung also warned us, when we get lost in the myth without awareness, we project impossible ideals. We confuse the symbol with the person. We demand perfection instead of seeing the human. The archetype is real, but it must be lived consciously. Otherwise, we drown in fantasy and miss the soul beneath the story. I choose love with awareness. Comment below, because writing this is a way of anchoring your transformation. It affirms that you no longer seek love to escape yourself, but to meet yourself. Words shape reality, and the universe responds when you speak your soul's truth aloud. To love eternally is not to cling forever. It is to recognize that some connections are mirrors of the divine, not because they last forever in form, but because they awaken something eternal within us. That awakening is the real reunion. Not all reunions look like fairy tales. Some happen in silence, in dreams, in the quiet, knowing that something sacred has moved through you and left a mark. When two souls are truly destined, what unites them is not possession, it's recognition. And once the soul has recognized the soul, nothing is ever the same again. Jung said that individuation, becoming who you truly are, requires symbolic separation from illusion, from dependence, from the parts of yourself still hiding in the shadows. And that's what these soul bonds do. They don't come to complete you. They come to shake you awake, to remind you of the self that's always been there, waiting behind the noise. Even after time, distance, silence, the energy of that bond remains. Not as romantic memory, but as a spiritual imprint. Because the true purpose of love is not to give you comfort, but clarity. Not to erase your wounds, but to help you heal them, consciously, fully, and with presence. That's what makes destined love unforgettable. Not how it began, but how it transformed you. And when love stops being a need and becomes a conscious offering, something shifts. You no longer search to be filled, you meet to expand. That's when reunion becomes possible. Real reunion. One not based on fantasy, but on essence. A love reborn not through desire, but through evolution. If this touched something deep in you, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and above all, share it with someone who might be living this story in silence. And now, let the video on the screen guide you deeper into the mysteries of the soul, the shadow, and the language of love that speaks far beyond words.